I learned the sound a marriage makes when it decides you're an inconvenience. It isn't a scream, it isn't a slammed door or a shattered plate. It's a clean little click, metal meeting metal, with the calm certainty of someone who believes you have nowhere else to go. The click woke me because it didn't belong in a house that was supposed to be ours. The lake house was always loud in quiet ways. Pine needles hissed against the roof when the wind shifted. Old boards exhaled and settled like an animal turning in its sleep. Water tapped the posts beneath the deck with patient, repeating fingers. But this sound was different. Sharp. Final. A lock accepting a key that wasn't meant for me. I opened my eyes to darkness and the pale glow of the moon spilling through the slats of the blinds. The room smelled like cedar and damp linen. I could hear my own breathing, too fast, as if my body had been awake long before my mind caught up. I sat up, careful not to rustle the quilt. My hand reached for the doorknob out of habit. The brass was chilled. I turned it gently. It didn't move. At first, I told myself it was swollen wood. Old doors and old houses stick. Vernon always said the place had character, like that word could make decay charming. I tried again, harder. Nothing. No give, no wiggle. Just the stubborn resistance of a dead end. My mouth went dry. I pressed my ear to the wood. From the other side came a faint, almost polite sound, like a little chain settling back into place. Not a latch. Something extra, something added. Down the hall, the floorboards creaked. Not the deep, groaning creak of the house settling. A careful creak. A human one. A foot stepping softly, trying not to announce itself. I whispered, "Vernon?" No answer. No irritation. Just the night outside scraping branches against glass. I glanced at the bedside clock, but the red numbers were dim. Time felt irrelevant anyway. What mattered was that I was in a bedroom with a door that no longer listened to me, my locked bedroom door from outside. I swung my legs out of bed, the wood floor cold under my feet, and moved toward the window. I pulled the curtain back and looked out. The yard dropped away toward the water, black and shining. A ribbon of fog hovered over the lake, drifting like breath. The dock reached out into it, a thin finger pointing into nowhere. The trees stood in tall ranks, their trunks pale in moonlight. If I screamed, no one would hear me. Not out here. Not in this slice of getaway Vernon loved because it made him feel like he owned the world. I tried the window latch. It held. Not stuck. Locked. A second lock. The kind you don't casually flip unless you're trying to keep someone in. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. I backed away and looked around, suddenly seeing the room differently. The dresser, the quilt, the framed photo on the nightstand. Vernon and me, years ago, smiling on this very porch like the lake had blessed us. The smile on my face looked practiced now, the way you smile when you want peace more than truth. I moved to the door again and listened. Somewhere farther down the hall, a low laugh slipped out and got swallowed fast, like a hand clapped over a mouth. A woman's laugh. Soft, breathy, and young enough to cut through me like cold water. My stomach turned. I forced myself to breathe through my nose, to keep panic from becoming sound. My mind tried to bargain. Maybe it's the TV, maybe it's a video on his phone. But the laugh came again, followed by a murmur. Two voices braided together, close enough to share heat. I stood very still, and in that stillness, a memory rose up sharp as the click that woke me. 2 weeks ago, Vernon slid a manila folder across our kitchen table as if it were a menu. "Just sign these," he said, eyes on his phone. "It's nothing. Updating a few things. Tax stuff. Property stuff." I didn't know property stuff. I knew how to make a home run. I knew how to show up, smooth edges, keep peace. Vernon knew that too. He had said it with that half smile he wore when he was sure he was smarter than you. "Retta, you don't need to worry your pretty head about it. I handle the serious things." I signed because 35 years trains you to believe your signature is just another way to say yes. Now, in the dark, those papers felt like a bruise I could finally see. I reached for my phone. The screen lit my hands with ghost blue. No missed calls, no messages from Vernon. I typed his name and hit call. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I sent a text. "Where are you?" No response. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, and I had to tap it awake again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I hated that my first instinct was still to make the message smaller, softer, easier for him to swallow. "Please, I can't open the door." The message delivered. Then, "Read." My breath caught. He had seen it. He had chosen not to answer. A new message slid onto my screen, not from his name, but from a number I didn't recognize. No contact photo, just words that looked too calm to belong to my fear. "Stop making noise. Go back to sleep." I read it twice, as if repetition would make it less real. Stop making noise. That meant someone could hear me. That meant someone was listening on the other side of that door, paying attention to my movements, my breath, my panic. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came quickly. "Someone trying to help you. Don't wake him up. Him." As if Vernon was the one who needed protecting. A small, stubborn part of me twitched awake. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder, a piece of myself I'd tucked away for decades because it was inconvenient to my marriage. I bent down and looked at the crack under the door. A thin blade of hallway light cut across the floor. That meant a light was on outside. That meant someone wanted to see. A shadow passed, slow and careful, blocking the light for a moment like an eclipse. I held my breath. The shadow paused. A soft scrape sounded, like something being dragged along the wall. Then, under the door, something slid. A white envelope, thick and stiff, pushed in with 2 fingers and released like bait. For a second, I didn't move. Curiosity is dangerous. Opening strange envelopes in locked rooms at lake houses is how women in scary stories disappear. But I wasn't in a story. I was in my own life, and my own life had just changed its rules. I reached for the envelope slowly. It was warm, as if it had been held in someone's hand for a long time. There was no stamp, no return address, just my name. Retta. Not Loretta, not Mrs. Gaines. Retta, like someone knew me well enough to be familiar. Or like someone had heard Vernon say it with that lazy authority he used when he wanted to remind me I belonged to him. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. The message was typed, the letters crisp and cruel in their neatness. "If you want the truth, check the kitchen drawer." That was it. No explanation, no comfort, just a direction. I stared at the words until they blurred, then blinked hard and forced my eyes to clear. My pulse pounded in my ears, loud as the lake water slapping the post below the deck. Kitchen drawer. In this house, the kitchen was the heart. It was where I cooked, where I served, where I cleaned up after other people's appetites. The kitchen was where I had always been most useful, and now it was where the truth had been hidden. I backed away from the door and scanned the room for leverage. Something to use, something to pry. In the bedside drawer, I found a tiny sewing kit, hotel style, probably left by a guest. Inside were safety pins, a needle, and a paperclip bent into a sad crooked shape. I straightened the paperclip with shaking fingers, then bent it into a narrow hook. I crouched by the door and slid the hook toward the lock mechanism, searching for any tiny give. The first attempt did nothing. The second scraped metal with a small, ugly sound. I froze, heart hammering, listening for footsteps. Silence. I tried again, slower, letting my breath fall into the rhythm of the lake. In, out, in, out. Something clicked inside the knob. Not the big click that woke me. A smaller one. A reluctant one. I turned the knob carefully. The door opened an inch. Cold air slipped in from the hallway, carrying the scent of someone's perfume. Sweet and expensive. The kind that clings to skin and refuses to apologize. It wasn't mine. Vernon said perfume gave him headaches. I stared into the crack and felt my spine straighten. The lock hadn't been stuck. It had been set. I pushed the door open another inch. A lamp on the console table was on, throwing a pool of honeyed light onto the wooden floor. Shadows moved at the far end, near the guest room, where the door was almost closed, but not quite. A sliver of brighter light escaped from it, and with it came a low murmur and that same intimate laugh. The mistress in the guest room wasn't a theory anymore. She was a sound in my house. My hand tightened around the note, as if holding words could protect me from what they led to. Kitchen drawer, the paper said. I could go down the hall, toward the sound of the betrayal itself, and confront it raw and bleeding. That would be the old way. React first, feel first, let them call me crazy for having emotions. Or I could follow the instruction like a map. I chose the map. I stepped into the hallway barefoot, every board cool beneath me, and closed the bedroom door behind me without letting it latch. I moved like the house itself, quiet, patient, holding its breath. As I passed the guest room, the voices inside rose and fell, careless. Whoever was in there believed the night belonged to them. They believed I was still trapped. I slipped down the stairs one step at a time, hand on the rail. The living room was dark, the fireplace cold and empty. A throw blanket lay crumpled on the sofa like someone had been sitting there earlier, waiting. The kitchen waited beyond, faintly lit by the glow from the microwave clock. The counters were clean, too clean, like someone had wiped them down not out of habit but out of nervousness. On the counter sat 2 whiskey tumblers, one with a lipstick smear so faint you'd miss it if you weren't looking for reasons to doubt your own life. A dish towel lay damp beside them. Near the sink was Vernon's phone charger, unplugged, tossed down like he'd been too busy to care where it landed. Busy with her. My mind tried to retreat into the safer story. Maybe he brought a client, maybe someone needed to crash in the guest room. But then I remembered how he'd insisted I take the smaller suitcase, how he'd helped me pack, folding my nightgown on top like he was arranging evidence. You don't pack for a vacation like that when you're hoping your wife will have fun. You pack like that when you're managing her movements. I wanted to be angry. Anger is warm, familiar, but what I felt was colder and steadier. This wasn't just an affair. This was planning. This was a husband who had rehearsed betrayal until it felt like business. And if it was business, there would be paperwork. Somewhere in this house, there would be secret property transfer papers with his neat signature at the bottom. Somewhere there would be dates, notarized stamps, and the kind of lies that turn a marriage into a late-life divorce revenge story. Not because revenge is the goal, but because survival requires receipts. I held the typed note under the microwave glow. Whoever printed it wanted me to take it seriously, and for the first time in years, my fear finally had direction tonight. My hands steadied, my feet planted. I told myself one sentence, simple as a vow. If he can lock me in, I can unlock the truth. If you're listening to me right now, pause and tell me in the comments, what city are you in and how old are you? I ask because a husband cheating at a lake house isn't just scandal. It's a warning. Betrayal doesn't care if you're 25 or 63. It shows up when it thinks you're tired enough to accept it. I pulled the drawer open, and that's when I saw what Vernon never expected me to touch. I pulled the drawer open. Inside, under a stack of neatly folded dish towels, sat a thin mustard-colored folder and a pen that wasn't mine. A binder clip pinched the papers together like a mouth refusing to confess. Across the top page, in bold letters, was a name I didn't recognize. Gaines Holdings, LLC. My last name, Gaines, sitting beside the word Holdings, like it had always belonged there. My stomach tightened. Vernon never mentioned an LLC. He mentioned golf scores, interest rates, and what other men should be doing with their money. He never mentioned anything that would give me a seat at the table. Upstairs, a woman laughed again, soft, breathy, too young for the life I'd built. The sound made the papers feel hot in my hands. I slid the folder back into the drawer, the way I'd found it, and closed it softly, because I wasn't ready to read it while my marriage was actively betraying me in the next room. And before I tell you what was in that folder, before we get to the signatures and the quiet, legal ways a husband can cheat you twice, you need to understand what kind of marriage can turn a lake house into a locked room. You need to understand me. My name is Retta Gaines, but most people call me Retta. I was 63 the night my husband cheated at the lake house, and what shocked me wasn't the affair. It was the planning, the precision, the way betrayal can come with paperwork. Vernon is 66. He speaks like a verdict. When we were young, that certainty felt like protection. I mistook it for love the way women are trained to do, especially women raised to believe that being chosen by a provider is something you thank God for, not something you interrogate. We met in 1989 at a community fundraiser in Augusta. I was 26, working the front desk at a dental office. Vernon was 29, already moving like he had a plan. Crisp white shirt, confident laugh. The kind of man older ladies point at and say, "That boy's going places." I wanted to go somewhere too. We married fast, respectable fast. Church wedding, silk flowers, sheet cake. My mama cried and said I'd done good. Vernon's mama said, "He needs a woman who knows how to keep a home." I took that as praise. I didn't realize it was a job description. The first years were ordinary: two-bedroom apartment, bills on the fridge, Vernon working in finance at a regional bank, me working full-time because we needed both paychecks. Back then, he still said "we" a lot. We're building. We're saving. We're going to be something. Then I got pregnant with our daughter, Simone, and the language changed. "A mother should be home," he said, like it was a moral law. "Daycare is strangers raising your baby." I argued softly. I said I wanted classes at night, a degree, something that belonged to me. Vernon kissed my forehead and told me, "Retta, you don't need all that. I'm going to take care of you." And I believed him, because believing him made the world easier. I quit my job. I learned to keep the house quiet when he came home, to fold his shirts the way he liked. Collars crisp, sleeves aligned like soldiers. I learned that peace in a marriage like mine wasn't something you shared. It was something you performed. 3 years later, our son Malik arrived. By then, Vernon was climbing. Promotions, bigger clients, sharper suits. Our early apartment became a cute anecdote he told at dinners. "Retta used to make miracles on a hot plate," he'd say, and everyone would laugh like it was charming. Nobody asked if I missed my life. When Vernon got transferred to Atlanta, we moved. He worked longer hours. I ran the household like a small company. Schedules, meals, school events, doctor visits, birthday parties that had to look effortless. Simone grew into a quick-tongued woman who became a lawyer. Malik became an engineer, steady and quiet. They loved their father's approval and learned early that disagreeing with him meant consequences, so they learned to keep things smooth. Including me. The lake house came later, Vernon's family place, tucked near a stretch of water that looks pretty in daylight and predatory at night. When his father died, Vernon framed it as duty. "Somebody's got to keep it in the family," he said. But I saw how his eyes shined when he spoke about it. Ownership was his religion. He used the lake house as a reward and a threat. If he was pleased, we went. If I disappointed him, we didn't. Out there, away from neighbors and people who might witness his tone, Vernon's rules stretched wider. When the kids were little, the lake house felt like summer. Fireflies in jars, corn on the cob. Vernon grilling while I ran inside-outside with wet towels and paper plates. At night, the children fell asleep on the couch smelling like sunscreen and lake water, and Vernon sat on the porch with a drink and told me, "See, this is why I work, so we can have this." I always nodded, even though I worked too, just in ways nobody put on resumes. In the last few years, something shifted. Not suddenly. Slowly, like mold spreading behind wallpaper, Vernon started correcting me in front of people. Not yelling. Vernon doesn't lose control. He edits you. "Retta, don't tell that story," he'd murmur when I mentioned our early days. "Nobody wants to hear about struggle. We're past that." He started buying things for me without asking. Clothes he thought looked more appropriate. Shoes that hurt my feet. When I said a pair pinched, he smiled and said, "You're not used to quality." He began carrying his phone like it was an organ. He stepped outside to take calls. He came home late with that clean hotel soap smell on him, as if he'd been washed by somewhere else. When I asked where he'd been, he said, "Working." the way a king says war. And then there were the papers. 2 weeks before the lake house trip, he slid a manila folder across the kitchen table. "Just sign these," he said, eyes on his phone. "Updating a few things. Tax stuff. Property stuff." I hesitated. "What is it?" He sighed, the long-suffering husband sigh that makes you feel guilty for existing. "Retta, it's just property transfer paperwork. Making sure the lake house stays in the family if something happens." Something happens. He said it like a shadow. I should have insisted on reading. I should have called Simone to look it over. But pride is a quiet trap. I didn't want Vernon to accuse me of distrusting him. I wanted, stupidly, to preserve the version of our marriage where I wasn't a woman who needed lawyers to feel safe. So I signed. The week of the trip, Vernon was almost kind. That should have been my warning. He offered to carry groceries. He asked what music I wanted in the car. He touched the small of my back in the kitchen, a gesture that felt practiced, like he was reminding himself how to act. Thursday night, I heard him on the phone in his office. The door was mostly closed, but houses like ours carry sound the way water carries secrets. He said, low and pleased, "Yeah, she won't be a problem." There was a pause, then a soft laugh. I stood in the hallway holding a laundry basket, and my skin prickled. Not jealousy, the feeling of being discussed like an obstacle, like a chair in the wrong spot. When I asked him about it, he didn't even blink. "Retta, you hear half a sentence and make it a whole drama," he said. "I was talking about a client. Don't start." Don't start. A leash made of 2 words. Friday morning, he told me to pack light. "Just a weekend," he said. "Fresh air, reset." He watched me pack like a supervisor, and when I reached for my heavier coat, he shook his head. "You won't need that." By the time we reached the lake, the sky was dull pewter, and the wind had teeth. The water looked like it could swallow sound. Vernon drove the last mile in silence, jaw tight, eyes forward, as if the road required all his control. When the lake house came into view, dark roof, pale porch rails, trees crowding close, I felt that old mix of comfort and unease. Comfort because I knew how to be useful there. Unease because I knew how small I could become there too. Vernon unlocked the door and stepped inside first, flipping on lights like he owned the air. He didn't kiss me. He didn't say, "We're here." He just moved through the rooms, checking windows, testing locks, making sure everything obeyed. I told myself I was imagining it. That afternoon, he disappeared to check the boat, leaving me to unpack, wipe counters, and make the place feel lived in. My hands did it automatically, because they know their old assignments, even when my heart is begging for new ones. At dusk, headlights cut through the trees and made the fog glow. A car rolled into the gravel drive and stopped. Vernon was out the door before I could even set the dish towel down. From the window, I watched him open the passenger door. A woman stepped out, tall, slim, hair glossy and straight. She wore a light coat, like she belonged to some warm city, not these cold woods. Vernon said something that made her laugh, soft and private, and he leaned in close, as if the night itself deserved discretion. I stepped back from the window so fast I nearly knocked over a chair. That was when the lake house stopped feeling like a family place and started feeling like a stage. And now, back in the present, standing in the kitchen with that drawer closed and that mysterious folder waiting like a snake, I finally understood what that woman's laugh meant. It meant the weekend wasn't for me at all, and that folder in the drawer was the script, written in ink, waiting for my trembling hands to read. I didn't open that drawer again right away. I stood in the kitchen with my palm on the wood, listening to the lake house breathe. The microwave clock glowed 2:41 a.m., and the silence felt staged, like a set built to trap a woman inside her own doubt. Upstairs came a murmur, then a woman's soft laugh. Intimate, unbothered. The sound slid down the stairwell like expensive perfume. Sweet, invasive, impossible to ignore once it touches you. I told myself, don't rush, don't explode, not yet. Vernon had always expected my feelings to be loud, so he could label them hysterical. If I cried, he called me dramatic. If I questioned him, He called me insecure. He trained me to swallow everything and smile like it tasted fine. But he trained me in something else, too. He trained me to observe. So I slid the drawer open, slow, silent, and took out the mustard folder I'd seen earlier. I set it beneath the dim under-cabinet light and flipped the binder clip. Gaines Holdings, LLC. Articles of Organization. Registered Agent, Vernon Gaines. My last name on his paperwork, like a costume he could wear while he erased me. A list of assets followed, typed in neat, unforgiving lines. The lake house parcel, our primary residence, a condo I didn't recognize, 2 vehicles, and a retirement account reference number. Then the phrase that tightened my throat. Sole member, Vernon Gaines. Sole. I turned the page. Quitclaim deed. My name, Loretta Denise Gaines, was printed as grantor, the person giving something away. My signature sat at the bottom, familiar and clean, beside a notary stamp dated 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I'd signed papers Vernon handed me for insurance while I was half listening and thinking about groceries. Power of attorney, durable, broad. The language was thick, but the meaning was simple. He could sell, transfer, otherwise dispose of my interests. My marriage was being converted into paperwork. And I was the raw material. A floorboard creaked. I snapped the folder shut and shoved it back into the drawer under dish towels. I turned on the faucet, wet my hands, and started wiping a counter that was already clean. Performance. Muscle memory. Vernon appeared in the kitchen doorway, barefoot, shirt half unbuttoned, eyes glossy with whiskey. He looked soft, almost tender, like a man coming down for water, if you ignored the ghost of another woman's perfume on his skin. "Retta," he said gently, "what are you doing up?" "I couldn't sleep," I replied, voice level. He leaned on the counter, watching me wipe. "You clean when you're anxious," he said. "Old habit." "My bedroom door was locked," I said, watching his eyes. A tiny pause, almost nothing. Then he smiled. "Locked? Old house. It sticks." "It was locked from the outside," I said. He chuckled like I'd told a harmless story. "You've been watching too much true crime." There it was. Make my reality sound like entertainment. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Go back upstairs, Retta. Don't wander around this late. You could hurt yourself." It sounded like concern. It felt like a warning. He went back upstairs. I waited until I heard the guest room door close. Guest room, not ours. Then exhaled like I'd been underwater. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every page in that folder. Quitclaim, power of attorney, LLC filings, and a printed notary appointment, confirmation for Monday morning. Bring spouse. Have spouse sign. Do not discuss details. Do not discuss details. I emailed the photos to myself, then to a small private email account Vernon didn't know existed. Then I stood there, staring at the drawer, letting the truth settle. This wasn't just an affair. It was an exit plan. A divorce trap built on my signatures. I scanned the hallway and noticed a smoke detector mounted too low in the corner. My stomach tightened. I stepped onto a chair, tilted it, and saw a tiny lens. A nanny cam. I slid the SD card out and put it in my pocket. If he wanted a quiet wife, he should have thought about what quiet women do when they stop being afraid of noise. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You still up?" I typed. "Who is this?" Reply. "Someone who knows what he's doing to you. Check his briefcase. Office, bottom drawer. Office, Vernon's den. His space." I walked down the hallway, the boards creaking under me like they wanted to tell on me. The den door was locked, of course. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed an old plastic loyalty card, slid it between latch and frame, and worked it until the latch gave. Click. Inside, the den smelled like leather and cedar and control. I pulled open the filing cabinet's bottom drawer. There it was. Vernon's briefcase and a slim black phone with no case. A burner. No lock on it. Messages lit the screen. The last outgoing text, time-stamped 2:43 a.m., read, "Stop making noise. Go back to sleep. My mouth went numb. He'd texted me like I was a nuisance he could quiet. Another thread, saved as B, was worse. Hotel addresses, late-night photos, and messages like, "She's asleep. Doors handled. After Monday it's done. Paperwork's almost finished. After Monday." I photographed the screen quickly, careful not to tap anything that would mark messages as read. I opened the briefcase. More property transfer papers, bank statements I didn't recognize, a wire template, a check to Hart Consulting, Brielle Hart. A draft marital settlement proposal sat underneath, written like a polite execution. It offered me a small monthly payment and required me to acknowledge I had no claim to business interests, property, or retirement. A signature line waited for me like a grave. I slipped the burner phone into my pocket. Evidence. I relocked the den and returned to the living room just as footsteps came down the stairs. Vernon arrived first. Behind him, Brielle. In the full light, she looked mid-30s, sharp-eyed, skin smooth, confidence practiced. She wore Vernon's gray hoodie. My Christmas gift. The sleeves swallowed her hands. She looked comfortable in my life. Vernon didn't introduce her properly. He tried, "Retta, this is Brielle, a colleague. We had business to discuss." Business. Brielle smiled at me like she was evaluating furniture. "Hi," she said, casual as a neighbor. "My bedroom door was locked," I said calmly. "From the outside." Brielle's smile twitched. Vernon's jaw tightened. "Old house," he started. "It didn't stick," I said. "It locked." Silence. Vernon stepped toward me, voice soft but edged. "Retta, it's late. We'll talk in the morning." "Okay," I said. He exhaled with relief, mistaking okay for surrender. I went upstairs. In my room, I called attorney Nia Caldwell, the woman whose card I'd kept since a church workshop on protecting yourself. Voicemail. I left a calm message with shaking hands. Documents, LLC, quitclaim, power of attorney, a mistress in the guest room, and a locked door from outside. Then I emailed everything. Minutes later, the click came again. My lock turned from the outside. The handle rattled as if someone tested it. Then footsteps moved away. He wanted me to feel the cage. I used a metal nail file to pop the latch from inside, quietly, just enough to prove I could. Then I waited, listening, heart hammering. At 4:17 a.m., an email arrived from Nia. "Call me now." I called. Nia answered instantly, voice low and steady. "Retta, are you safe?" "I'm locked in," I whispered. "Do not confront him alone," she said. "Do not sign anything else. If you can leave, go somewhere public with cameras. Text me your exact location and the other woman's name." "Brielle Hart," I said, then texted it with the address. A knock hit my door, 3 gentle taps. "Retta?" Vernon's voice, too sweet. "You up?" "Yes." "I'm coming in." The knob turned. The lock held. A pause too long. Then his irritation. "Why is the door not opening?" "It's locked," I said through the wood. "Like earlier." "Open it." "Why are you locking me in?" I asked. Silence. Then softer. "What are you talking about? Open the door." "I know about the papers," I said. The air changed. Vernon's voice dropped. "Open the door, Retta." "No." "You have no idea what you're messing with." Brielle's sleepy voice floated from down the hall. "Vernon, what is happening?" Vernon didn't answer her. He stayed on me like I was a problem he could pressure into compliance. Then, after a long pause, he switched back to smooth. "You're tired. We'll talk later." Footsteps moved away. Guest room door shut again. Final. Quiet. Nia whispered in my speaker. "Retta, leave now before daylight." "The doors are locked," I whispered. "Use a window," she said. "Take your ID, keys, purse, nothing else." I forced the window latch with the curtain wrapped around my hand. It snapped. Cold fog poured in, wet, sharp, smelling like lake water and pine. I climbed out onto the porch roof, shingles slick under my bare feet, and slid down to the deck rail. My ankles flared with pain when I landed, but I stayed upright. Go, Nia said. I moved across the yard in the fog, keeping low, keeping steady. Somewhere on the lake, something splashed, too heavy to be a fish. A porch light flicked on upstairs. My stomach dropped. I hit the car, pressed the key fob. The lock chirped, headlights flashed, and the fog lit up like a stage. The upstairs window flew open. Retta! Vernon shouted. What the hell are you doing? I started the engine. Gravel popped under the tires as I reversed. Vernon burst onto the porch barefoot, silhouetted like a man caught in his own nightmare. Stop! He yelled. Stop right now! I didn't. I backed out, swung the wheel, and drove down the narrow road through the trees, headlights carving tunnels through fog. Behind me, headlights appeared. Too close. He was following. Nia's voice sharpened. Stay on main roads. Find a public place. Call 911 if you feel threatened. For years, I'd avoided making trouble. Tonight, I dialed anyway, gave the operator my location, described the car. The headlights behind me backed off a little. Control hates witnesses. A gas station appeared ahead, bright and buzzing. I pulled in under the cameras and stayed in the car, doors locked, breath ragged. The pursuing car slowed at the entrance, hesitated, then rolled past without stopping. Headlights swept across my windshield, one cold look, then vanished into the dark. I realized I'd been holding my breath. It left my body like a prayer. If you're listening right now and you've ever felt the cold shape of control around your life, tell me in the comments what city you're in. Betrayal loves isolation. Community is how we break its spell. A new text buzzed in. Unknown number. You made it out. Good. Don't go back. He's worse than you think. I typed, Who are you? Reply, someone who used to work for him. Save everything. He'll say you stole. A system, I thought. Not a mistake. A pattern. Nia booked me a hotel in town. Cameras, people, light. I checked in under my name and locked the door like my life depended on it, because it did. I put the burner phone and SD card in the room safe and wrote down everything in my notes app. Times, locks, texts, the chase, the gas station. Vernon left a voicemail at dawn, calm as a funeral director. Retta, you're overreacting. Come back. And you took my phone. That's theft. Don't make this worse. The threat was tucked in the word theft. At 9 a.m., Nia arrived with a private investigator, Darius Cole, former law enforcement, eyes that missed nothing. We sat at the small table by the window while morning traffic moved outside like nothing had happened. Nia reviewed the photos without gasping. She didn't dramatize. She assessed. This LLC is asset shielding, she said. The quitclaim, your signature, gives him arguments, but coercion and deception matter. Locking you in matters. Surveillance matters. Darius asked about the nanny cam. I handed him the SD card. He placed it in an evidence bag like it was a living thing. We'll image it, he said. Preserve chain of custody. If it shows restraint, threats, or the mistress's presence, it helps. Nia's pen moved quickly on her legal pad. We file an emergency motion to stop him from dissipating assets, she said. We put the notary on notice. We request temporary orders. And Retta, no more private conversations with him. Everything through counsel. For a second, grief rose in me. 35 years reduced to counsel and filings. Then I remembered the click of the lock from the outside. I nodded. No more. Darius leaned forward slightly. One more thing, ma'am. That unknown texter, don't engage further. Save it. We'll handle it. When they left, the room felt quieter, but not emptier. Different. Like the air had changed because the truth had entered it and refused to leave. My phone lit up with my daughter Simone calling, then my son Malik. I let both go to voicemail. Not to punish them, to protect myself. Because Vernon would be working them already, planting his version first. Unstable wife, theft, overreaction. I wasn't playing defense in a story he wrote. I opened my notes and typed a sentence I'd never dared to write before. Today, I choose myself. And beneath it, the cold truth that was finally mine. He built this plan because he believed I would never fight back. He believed wrong. I didn't answer Simone or Malik, but their calls carved a hollow place in my chest. Motherhood trains you to respond. Fix, soothe, translate. Even now, with proof of my husband's betrayal in a safe, my first instinct was still to keep everyone else comfortable. I sat on the bed and forced myself to breathe through it. Nia had told me something earlier that I kept replaying. Control hates witnesses. Vernon would try to turn my own children into witnesses. For him. My phone buzzed again. A text this time, from Simone. Mom, Dad says He says you're having some kind of breakdown. He said you ran out in the night and stole his phone, and you're listening to strangers and… Simone's voice came through even in text. Fast, panicked, loyal to the version of her father that had always been safe to believe. I typed 3 words, deleted them, typed again, deleted again, because anything I sent could be forwarded, twisted, used. So I wrote, I'm safe, I'll explain soon. Please don't meet with Dad alone. I stared at that last sentence before sending it. It felt like treason. In our family, Vernon was the axis. We all rotated around him and called it stability. But stability had a lock and a key last night. I hit send. Then I waited for the next move. It came quietly, like everything Vernon did when he wanted to look innocent. At 10:06 a.m., a new voicemail arrived from a number I didn't recognize. When I played it, the voice was crisp, professional, and already angry, as if I'd stolen his time. Mrs. Gaines, the man said. This is Attorney Kessler. I represent Vernon Gaines. You removed property belonging to my client last night and fled the residence. You need to return that property immediately. Failure to do so may result in criminal charges. Additionally, any documents you believe you saw were part of routine estate planning. Stop escalating a private marital disagreement. Call me back. Routine estate planning, criminal charges, marital disagreement. Words arranged like furniture to make me seem unstable and him seem reasonable. I replayed the voicemail once more, listening for what he didn't say. He didn't ask if I was safe. He didn't ask why I'd fled. He didn't ask why a wife would climb out a window in fog. He didn't care about the why. He cared about the phone. Evidence threatens plans. Plans threaten people. I forwarded the voicemail to Nia. Let it live in her files where it couldn't be softened. Then I sat very still and watched my hands. The same hands that had signed a deed without reading. The same hands that had climbed onto a slick porch roof at dawn. Hands can be trained to serve. They can also be trained to survive. At 11:15 a.m., Nia texted, Meet me downstairs. We're moving quickly today. In the lobby, Nia's face looked sharpened by urgency. Darius stood beside her, with a laptop bag and a calm I envied. We pulled the LLC filings, Nia said. He formed it recently. He's moving assets. Darius imaged the SD card you took. There's footage. My throat tightened. Of what? Darius opened the laptop and angled it toward me. The hallway, your bedroom door, the guest room. The screen filled with grainy night blue. The lake house hallway appeared, empty at first. Then Vernon stepped into view with a key in his fingers. He looked deliberate, unhurried, a man performing a routine. He tested my doorknob, leaned close, and turned the key. Locked. From the outside. On camera. He paused, as if listening, then walked away like he'd just secured a package. My stomach dropped. Seeing it on video was worse than remembering. Memory can be doubted. Video doesn't care if you're called emotional. Brielle appeared next, wearing that same hoodie. She leaned against the wall and laughed. No audio on the clip, but I could see it in her shoulders, in the tilt of her head. My confinement as entertainment. Darius paused the footage at the frame where Vernon's hand held the key against the lock. Timestamp is clear, he said. This matters. Nia's voice was low. This supports coercive control. It supports emergency temporary orders. Darius clicked to another clip. Vernon in the den, moving papers in and out of his briefcase. Speaking into the burner phone. Again, no audio, but the intent was visible. A man arranging an outcome. Then the final clip. Vernon outside my door again, head angled down, listening. He stood there for a long beat, like he wanted to feel the power of a woman trapped behind wood. I watched his face on the screen and realized something cold. He didn't lock me in because he was afraid of being caught. He locked me in because he liked deciding where I could exist. We closed the laptop. Nia's expression didn't soften. "We're going to the courthouse," she said. "I'm filing emergency motions now. Darius will send still images of the lock action and the timestamps." Courthouse. That word used to sound like failure, like shame, like a family's private business dragged into public. Today, it sounded like structure, like rules, like a place where Vernon's charm didn't automatically win. We filed for temporary restraints on asset transfers and no contact provisions, except through counsel. Nia moved like someone who had done this 100 times. Clip here, signature there, stamp here, next window, next clerk. Paperwork, the same weapon Vernon had used, became a shield in Nia's hands. By early afternoon, we had interim orders. Not everything, but enough to slow his hands. Nia turned to me in the courthouse hallway. "He's restrained from transferring, hiding, or disposing of assets pending a hearing," she said. "And contact is limited to counsel." Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a stamp that says, "You don't get to touch her anymore." We walked out into the sunlit parking lot, and my body felt wrong under daylight, like my skin still remembered fog and locks. Then Darius stopped, eyes narrowing. "We have company," he said softly. A black SUV rolled up to the curb, the window lowered. Vernon's face appeared, clean-shaven, dressed, controlled. He looked exactly like the man everyone trusted. If you didn't know him, you'd think he was here to pick up his wife from a doctor's appointment. Only his eyes were different. His eyes were glass. "Retta," he called, voice smooth. "Can we please talk like adults?" Nia stepped between us and instantly. "Mr. Gaines, you're represented," she said. "You will communicate through counsel." Vernon smiled tightly. "Nia, this is unnecessary drama." "You locked your wife in a room," Nia replied. "We have it on video." For one thin second, the mask shifted. A twitch at the corner of his mouth, a flicker behind his eyes. The moment he realized the story he'd been writing had been stolen from him, he recovered fast. "Video?" He laughed lightly. "Please, you're turning a misunderstanding into a circus." Circus. His favorite word for women's pain. Darius's voice stayed calm. "Any direct contact is now documented and may violate temporary orders." Vernon's gaze slid to Darius. "And who are you?" "Someone who documents," Darius said. Vernon looked back at me. "Your children are terrified," he said, voice soft with practiced concern. "Simone is crying. Malik thinks you've lost your mind. Why are you doing this? Come home. We can fix it." Home. The word hit my chest like a memory. I saw our kitchen in Atlanta, the polished counters, the family photos, the illusion of safety. Then I heard the click of the lock from the outside. "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You did this." His smile vanished. His eyes turned hard, almost offended, like I'd broken a rule he believed was sacred. "You're making a mistake," he said, quiet enough to be private, loud enough to sting. "No," I said again. "You did." He held my gaze for a second too long, then rolled the window up. The SUV drove away like nothing had happened. My knees went soft. Nia touched my elbow gently. "Breathe," she said. I did. The rest of the day became logistics. New passwords, credit freezes, account lists, filings. Darius traced filings and sent Nia details. Nia drafted letters to Vernon's attorney. Each step felt like learning to walk in a body that had been asleep for decades. At 6:20 p.m., Simone showed up at my hotel. I knew it was her before I opened the door because I recognized her knock. 2 fast taps and 1 slow, like she was still a girl trying not to bother me while I cooked. When I opened it, she stood there in leggings and a hoodie, hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes swollen red. "Mom," she breathed, like the word itself was relief. She stepped inside and looked around as if searching for proof I wasn't kidnapped. "Dad says he says you're having some kind of breakdown," she said quickly. "He said you ran out in the night and stole his work phone, and you're listening to strangers and—" "Simone," I interrupted softly. She froze. She wasn't used to me interrupting. I pointed to the chair. "Sit!" She sat, hands clenched tight. "He said the papers you found were just planning," she rushed. "He said you don't understand, and you panicked, and—" I opened the safe and took out the burner phone and the SD card in its evidence bag. I set them on the table like objects from a crime scene. Simone stared. "What is that?" "Evidence," I said. Her eyes flicked to my face. "Mom, what?" I slid my phone toward her and pulled up the photos. Vernon's burner messages, his language, his plan. Not every detail, just enough. She read. Her throat worked as if she was trying to swallow something too big. This is Dad's writing," she whispered. "Yes," I said. She scrolled to the message. "She's asleep, doors handled." Her face drained. "Doors handled," she repeated. "He locked my bedroom door from the outside," I said. Simone's hand flew to her mouth. "No." "Yes." I showed her the video still. Grainy, blue, undeniable. Vernon turning the lock. Simone made a sound like a sob caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Mom!" I watched her carefully, ready for reflexive defense, for excuses, for denial. But she didn't defend him. She just stared at the screen like she was seeing her father for the first time. "I thought you were exaggerating," she said, voice cracking. "I thought, Dad always says you—" "Dad always says I'm emotional," I finished. "Dad always says I don't understand paperwork. Dad always says I'm lucky." Simone's shoulders collapsed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I didn't rush to soothe her. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I needed her to sit with the truth. The truth doesn't work if you hurry it away. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "He'll try to say you're unstable." "Don't argue. Let the paperwork talk." Then, a second message. "He's going to move cash tonight. Check the boat." Boat. The lake house boat Vernon treated like a trophy, covered at night, keys kept safe. A cold line formed down my spine. If he was moving cash, he'd planned for this. He wasn't scrambling. He was executing. I showed the texts to Nia on a call. Her voice sharpened immediately. "Do not go back," she said. "But we can verify through Darius. Forward those to me." I did. Nia paused, then said quietly, "Retta, whoever that is, they know his habits." Simone shivered. "Who keeps texting you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But they've been right so far." "It's creepy," she whispered. Creepy was the right word. Not supernatural, human. The kind of creepy that comes from realizing your husband built a whole hidden system where people watch, warn, and wait. Later that night, Malik arrived. His face was tight, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the room like he expected a trick. He hugged Simone quickly, then looked at me. "Mom," he said, controlled. "Tell me exactly what's going on." I didn't soften it. I pointed to the table. "Read," I said. He picked up my phone and scrolled through the images with slow, careful precision, like an engineer inspecting a blueprint. His face stayed blank until he reached doors handled. He looked up. "Did he lock you in?" "Yes," I said. He stared a long moment, then watched the video clip again. Twice. Like repetition might make it less real. When he finally set the phone down, his hands trembled slightly. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, this is real." Simone exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all day. Malik rubbed his forehead hard. Dad said you stole his phone, he muttered. I took a burner phone from his briefcase, I said. It contains evidence of fraud and coercion. Malik swallowed. He has a burner, he whispered, like the concept itself insulted his idea of his father. He has an LLC and paperwork designed to remove me from my own life, I said. Malik's eyes sharpened. We need to freeze accounts, he said automatically. Credit, titles, everything. I nodded once. We moved through council. We sat in silence for a moment, the three of us, like strangers learning each other again. In that moment, I understood. Survival isn't loud, it's documented, deliberate, and patient. My skin went cold. Not because I believed in monsters, because I had married one. And for decades, I'd called him husband. We didn't sleep much that night. Simone curled on the hotel couch with her knees tucked up, phone in her hands like a rosary. Malik paced in short, tight loops, the way he did when he was trying not to feel. And I sat at the little desk under the lamp, writing down every detail again, times, clicks, footsteps, because when a man like Vernon starts rewriting reality, your only protection is a record. At 5:06 a.m., Nia texted one line. Emergency hearing today. Be ready. The morning felt too bright for what had happened in the dark. Sunlight came through the curtains like it had no idea a lock had been turned on my life. I showered, dressed in plain black pants and a cream sweater, and pinned my hair back with hands that still wanted to shake. I kept hearing the click in my head, as if the sound had followed me from the lake. Before we left for the courthouse, Darius met us in the lobby. He looked like he hadn't slept either, but his calm was the kind that comes from practice. I ran plates, he said quietly. Brielle Hart's car is registered to a company account tied to Vernon's LLC, not her personal name. That means he's been funding her through structure. Simone's mouth fell open. So he's hiding her. Darius nodded. And one more thing, boat storage. The marina has a separate billing account, different mailing address. My stomach tightened. The boat, I whispered. Darius's eyes didn't blink. We'll verify. But people move cash through places that feel temporary. Water, storage, anywhere they think paper can't breathe. At the courthouse, everything smelled like disinfectant and old paper. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, steady and indifferent. Nia moved us through security, her hand on my elbow like a guide through a fog. Today is not the full case, she told me as we waited outside the courtroom. Today is about stopping him from moving assets and documenting what happened at the lake house. Keep your voice steady. Let the facts do the bleeding. Across the hallway, Vernon appeared with Attorney Kessler. Vernon looked immaculate. He had that calm face he wore for bank meetings and funerals, the face that made strangers trust him. But his eyes were different now, too alert, too hungry. Kessler spoke to Nia with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Counselor, we can resolve this privately. Your client is embarrassed. My client is concerned for her mental state. Nia's voice stayed even. My client is concerned for her safety, given your client locked her in a bedroom and monitored her with covert surveillance. Kessler's smile flickered. Allegations. Nia lifted her folder slightly. Evidence. We went inside. The judge, Judge Halston, was a woman in her 50s, with tired eyes and a mouth that looked like it had heard too many excuses. She took one glance at the file and then at Vernon. Mr. Gaines, she said, you understand this is an emergency hearing because the court believes there is risk of dissipation of assets and intimidation. Vernon rose slowly. Your Honor, I'm shocked we're here. My wife is confused. She misunderstood paperwork and panicked. I've tried to calm her. I watched him lie with the same voice he used to say grace at Thanksgiving. Nia stood. Your Honor, we have photographs of LLC documents, a quitclaim deed bearing Mrs. Gaines's signature obtained under deception, a durable power of attorney, a burner phone with messages that include, quote, doors handled, and surveillance footage showing Mr. Gaines locking Mrs. Gaines's bedroom door from the outside. The courtroom air shifted. Nia handed over still images. Judge Halston studied them in silence. Her eyes moved from Vernon's hand at the lock to the timestamp to the next frame. Brielle in the hallway, laughing. When she looked up, her gaze was flat. Mr. Gaines, explain why your hand is on the exterior lock of the bedroom door at 2:39 a.m. Vernon's throat bobbed. Your Honor, the house is old. We secure doors at night. You secured your wife's door, the judge said. From the outside. Judge Halston turned to me. Mrs. Gaines, did you feel you were free to leave the residence? I stood, hands clasped so tightly my fingers ached. No, Your Honor. The windows were latched. The door was locked. I received a text telling me to stop making noise. That message came from a burner phone in my husband's briefcase. Kessler tried to pivot to theft. The judge stopped him with a raised hand, then listened as Nia explained the covert camera and chain of custody. Judge Halston's voice stayed low and sharp. Covert surveillance in a marital setting is serious. Locking a spouse in is serious. And if assets are being moved, this court will take that personally. Her ruling landed in clean, heavy sentences. Vernon was restrained from transferring or encumbering any marital assets. All communication would go through counsel. And a hearing date was set for fuller temporary orders. She also ordered Vernon to stay away from me, except through attorneys. When the gavel hit, I didn't feel triumph. I felt air return to my lungs. Outside the courtroom, Vernon moved fast. He stepped toward Simone, hands open like he was pleading with a child. Baby, he said softly, you know your mama gets carried away. I'm trying to protect her. Simone's voice shook, but it didn't break. Dad, stop! Vernon blinked, like that word surprised him. He turned to Malik. Son, you understand paperwork. Tell her she's ruining the family. Malik's eyes were hard. You locked her in, Dad. For a second, I saw something ugly underneath Vernon's calm. Rage without heat, the kind that calculates. Darius stepped between them. Any intimidation is documented, he said quietly. Vernon stared at Darius, then walked away without another word, Kessler at his shoulder. That evening, just after sunset, my phone vibrated with a voicemail from an unknown number. Vernon's voice came through anyway, smoothed, careful, the way he sounded when he wanted a banker to say yes. Retta, he murmured, you're being influenced. Come back to the house. We'll talk like adults. You don't want people misunderstanding you. Then his tone shifted, 1 degree colder. And tell your investigator to stop digging. Some holes don't lead to truth. They lead to accidents. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Outside the hotel window, a black sedan idled at the curb, headlights off. It sat there long enough to feel like a message, then rolled away. A minute later, someone slid something under my door. I waited until the hallway footsteps faded, then crouched and picked it up with 2 fingers. A white rose. Perfect. The stem cut clean, no note, no name, just a flower laid like a warning, as if romance and threat could wear the same perfume. Simone saw it in my hand and went pale. Dad wouldn't. Your father would, I said quietly. And he just did. We didn't go back to the hotel right away. Nia brought us to her office and started turning my fear into filing. She sent immediate notices to banks. She placed a preservation request on digital accounts. She made my life a list of passwords and steps, because lists don't flinch. That night, the lake house came back anyway. I'd close my eyes and see the hallway camera's blue glow. I'd hear the careful creak of a floorboard and feel that sick certainty of someone listening outside my door. Sleep came in thin strips, torn easily by memory. On the 5th day, Darius called with his voice lower than usual. Retta! I went to the marina. The boat's storage locker has a separate padlock. New, not the marina's, his. What does that mean? I asked, already knowing. It means he's using it as a safe. Naya moved fast. She obtained a limited preservation order. Darius and a court officer met at the marina. I didn't go. I couldn't bear to smell the lake again yet. I sat in my room, phone in my hand, waiting. When Darius finally called, he exhaled once before speaking. We opened it. What was inside? My voice sounded far away. A lockbox. he said. Cash bundles, a second burner phone, and a small notebook. A notebook? I whispered. Darius's voice tightened. It's a schedule, dates, notes, and your name is written beside the words. Contain, keep calm, move assets. Contain. My stomach rolled. I pressed my hand against my mouth, feeling my pulse in my fingertips. Nia put the call on speaker. Photograph everything. Preserve. We'll submit to the court. Already done, Darius said. After the call ended, Simone reached for my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I looked at my daughter, grown, successful, finally seeing, and felt something inside me shift. Not forgiveness yet, but direction. Help me, I said softly. Not by fighting him for me, by believing me the first time. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I will. 2 nights later, Vernon's attorney requested mediation. The tone had changed. The threats were quieter. The language had new words. Resolution. Fair. Amicable. Naya read the email and smiled without warmth. He wants to settle before full discovery, she said, because full discovery opens every locked door. We met in Nia's office the following morning. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and printer ink. It was a different kind of cold than the lake house, a cold built on rules. Vernon arrived with Kessler. He looked tired now. The immaculate suit couldn't hide the shadows under his eyes. Control takes energy when it starts failing. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the recorder Nia set down. Recording? Kessler asked sharply. Just in case, Nia replied. Vernon's gaze finally met mine. His eyes were flatter than I'd ever seen. Retta, he said, quiet. We didn't have to do all this. I leaned back in my chair. You locked me in. He swallowed. You're twisting things. Naya slid a photo across the table, the frame of his hand turning the lock. This is not twistable. Kessler cleared his throat. We're prepared to offer a settlement, he said, and slid papers forward. Monthly support, health coverage, a clean break. Naya didn't touch the papers. No, Kessler blinked. Excuse me? Nia's voice was calm, almost bored. No. Vernon's fingers flexed on the table. Retta, be reasonable. I felt the old fear try to rise, the old training. Then I remembered my name beside the word contain. I leaned forward slightly. You contained me, I said softly. Now you can watch what happens when I'm not contained. Silence filled the room, thick as wet fog. Naya opened her folder and laid out our terms, each one a nail. A majority share of marital assets, reimbursement for funds spent on Brielle's condo and lifestyle, attorney's fees, and a restraining order. She included the boat lockbox inventory and stills from the surveillance. Vernon stared at the pages like they were written in a foreign language. Kessler's jaw tightened. This is punitive. This is consequences, Nia replied. Vernon's voice dropped, colder. You're trying to destroy me. I met his gaze. You tried to erase me. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the office air conditioner, steady as a heartbeat in a room full of threats. Then Vernon exhaled slowly and said, almost to himself, You don't know what you're doing. I smiled, small and tired. That's the first thing you've been wrong about in a long time. And when we walked out of that room, I didn't feel free yet, but I felt uncontained. And that was the beginning. The settlement didn't happen in one dramatic blow. It happened the way poison leaves a body, slow, ugly, and necessary. 2 weeks after mediation, Vernon's attorney called Nia with a different voice than the one he'd used when he threatened me with criminal charges. This voice was dry, careful, trying to sound like a man who still had options. My client is willing to accept terms, he said. Nia didn't ask which terms. She already knew. When control starts losing, it always tries to bargain for dignity. We sat in Judge Halston's courtroom on a gray Thursday morning while rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. Vernon didn't look at me. He kept his hands folded on the table as if he were praying, but his eyes were fixed on the floor, like the ground was safer than facing what he'd done. The judge reviewed the agreement with the same tired precision she used for every case: percentages, accounts, property, attorney fees, reimbursements. Only once did her eyes sharpen when she reached the clause about the restraining order and the surveillance. "Mr. Gaines," she said, voice flat, "do you understand that your wife's safety concerns are not misunderstandings? They are documented." Vernon's jaw worked. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand that if you violate this order, there will be consequences?" "Yes." "Sign." The pen looked too small in his hand for what it cost him. When it was over, I expected some fireworks inside me. Relief, triumph, joy. Instead, I felt a quiet kind of numbness, like my body had held fear for so long, it didn't know what to do with empty space. Outside on the courthouse steps, Simone hugged me hard, crying into my shoulder like she was trying to erase years with pressure. Malik stood close, one hand on my back, steady and silent. Nia handed me a folder, thick with papers, and said softly, "It's done." Done. Such a small word for a marriage that had taken 35 years of my life. Vernon came out behind us with Kessler. He paused at the top of the steps, rain misting his suit. For 1 second, he looked older than 66. Not because of wrinkles, because of absence. No swagger, no audience. Just a man who had spent decades practicing dominance and suddenly had nobody left to dominate. He stared at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into his life and stolen it. Then he said something I'll never forget. Not because it was loud, but because it was almost gentle. "I never thought you'd do this," he murmured. There was no apology in it, just surprise, like a thief shocked his victim fought back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse him. I just met his eyes and said, "That was your mistake." His face tightened. Kessler touched his elbow and guided him away. Vernon didn't look back. The first night after the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my hotel room with the curtains open. The city lights pulsed outside like a living thing. My hands rested on my knees, still. For once not reaching for a dish towel or a mop or a pen Vernon shoved at me. In the silence, the lake house tried to crawl back into my head. I heard the click again. I felt the doorknob that wouldn't turn. I smelled Brielle's perfume in the hallway like a ghost. Trauma is strange like that. It doesn't end when the papers say it's over. It lingers in sounds and shadows, in the way your body startles at ordinary locks. So, I did something Nia suggested early on. I built new routines, new proof. I moved into a condo downtown, small, bright, and mine. No lake fog, no isolated trees. Neighbors above, below, beside me. People. Witnesses. Cameras in the lobby. A doorman who knew my name and didn't call me honey like I was furniture. The first week, I woke up at 2:39 a.m. every night, heart racing, as if my body still expected a key to turn from the outside. I would sit up and stare at my own door. Then I'd get out of bed, walk to it, and place my palm flat against the wood. Unlocked. I would whisper into the dark, "You're safe," over and over until my breathing matched the words. Simone started coming over on Sundays with coffee and a notebook. Not to ask me for something, not to hurry through a check-in, just to sit with me like a daughter who finally understood her mother is a whole person. One Sunday she said, "Mom, how did you not hate him?" I thought about it. Hate is warm. It burns. It keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. Vernon had tied me up enough. "I don't want him to have that part of me," I said. Malik handled things differently. He sent me spreadsheets. Yes, my son. He made sure my accounts were secure, my credit clean, my passwords reset. He never said long apologies. But once, while we were installing a new lock system in my condo, he looked at me and said quietly, "I'm sorry I didn't see." I nodded. "Now you do?" And then there was Brielle. For a while she vanished. No texts, no sightings, no whispers. People like her don't like storms. They like winning. But Darius called me one evening and said, "You want the last update?" I sat at my kitchen table, my own table, and felt my spine straighten. "Yes." "Brielle dumped him," Darius said simply. "As soon as the injunction hit and the discovery started, she disappeared. And the condo in her name? It's being litigated. She's scared." I stared at the wall for a long moment. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt confirmation. It had never been love. It had been leverage. Status. A man's wallet wearing a wedding ring. Vernon got hired at another firm. Lower position, smaller paycheck, quiet reputation. He moved into an apartment on the edge of the city where nobody cared who he used to be. Sometimes, according to Simone, he would sit in his car after work and just stare at his steering wheel like he couldn't remember how to be without someone beneath him. That should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me feel sad in a clean, distant way, like watching a house burn after you've already walked away. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The revenge isn't in watching them suffer. The revenge is in sleeping with your door unlocked and still feeling safe. The revenge is in speaking without rehearsing your tone first. The revenge is in taking up space, quietly, fully, without permission. At 63, I enrolled in a community college course I'd always wanted: business basics and real estate investing. I sat in a classroom with people young enough to be my grandchildren, and I didn't shrink. When the instructor asked questions, I raised my hand. When group work started, I led. Not because I needed to prove something, because I finally could. And sometimes, when the room got too quiet, I would think of the woman I used to be, the one who signed papers without reading, the one who believed "I'll take care of you" meant safety. I don't hate her. I honor her because she survived long enough for me to become this version of myself. If you're still here with me, I want you to do one thing. Write in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is. I want to see how far this story traveled, because stories like mine don't belong in locked rooms. They belong in light. And if you've ever heard a click in your own life, some quiet sign that someone is trying to control where you can exist, please hear me. It's not too late. Not at 30, not at 50, not at 63. The moment you choose yourself, the lock stops being a sentence. It becomes evidence. And that, no matter how cold the night gets, changes everything. If this story hit you, please tap like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. Your voice matters here. And when this video ends, click one of the stories on screen, because the next one might be the one that saves you sooner than I saved myself.